What's up, y'all? I'm Lady, and in today's video, I want to talk about Like Water for Chocolate, a novel in monthly installments with recipes, romances, and home remedies by Laura Esquivel. And this is a translated work by Thomas and Carol Christian. And this book was originally published in January of 1989 in Mexico. This was a good book, y'all. It's only 246 pages, but it covers a lot, okay? And it took me 8 days to read this book only because I did not have access to the audiobook. And then it was just a busy time for me. But I could easily, if I wasn't as busy as I was that week when I had this book, I would have finished this really in one, maybe two sittings. But overall, it took me 8 days to read it, and I really enjoy it. Like the title says, monthly installments, recipes, romances, home remedies, all of that is mixed into this book. Also, some magical realism and a bit of historical fiction. And I absolutely loved reading about the recipes in this book. I also say that I'm not usually a fan of magical realism, but in this book, I loved it. I absolutely loved it. And I think it's a movie, so I need to go and find the movie, right? Since I enjoyed the book so much. This one I gave, I think 4 stars, 4 or 5 stars. It is really good. The book follows a family of women in turn of the century Mexico. The Mexican Revolution is in the backdrop of the story, and it starts off with a mother and daughter in the kitchen cooking. The daughter cries while cutting onions, and her mother says to her, "You're just like your great aunt Tita." And the story goes from there. So we follow Tita in this story, who is the youngest of 3 sisters. So tradition tells her that she cannot marry because the youngest daughter is responsible for taking care of the mother in old age. And her mother tends for that to go down, right? Like, you're the one that's going to take care of me. You have to stay here with me. You have to do all these things. Tita was also born with she wouldn't feed or wouldn't eat as a baby. So the lady that worked in the kitchen for the family pretty much raised and fed her. And that's how she spent most of her childhood, growing and learning and living in the kitchen. And so she became the cook, of the family and everything, right? So that's where the recipes start in here. Each chapter in this book starts with a month of the year and it goes through December, but the story covers way more than just 1 year's time span. So, where the romance starts, Tita meets Pedro and falls in love. He requests her hand in marriage, goes to her mother and requests it. Her mother refuses and instead offers Pedro the opportunity to marry Tita's sister. Okay? Him being a fool, I can't say anything else. He agrees to marry her sister even though he is in love with Tita. He has this crazy idea that he'll just marry her sister because that means he will be close to Tita, which dumb, okay? So he just want to be close to her. So yeah. So that's where the romance comes in because she's in love with him and he's in love with her, but he marries her sister. And then her mom does everything in her power to keep them apart. And so that's all I say about the romance part of it. Um the phrase like water for chocolate is a common expression in Spanish speaking countries, which means one's emotions are on the verge of boiling over. And that applies very well to this story because Tita and many of the characters are filled with emotions: love, passion, anger. Everything is just spilling over in this book, especially, with the time frame, with the Mexican Revolution, being in the backdrop and some things that happened in the story with that, and also the passion and the love that is expressed by her older sister in a situation in this book. And it was just so, just so good. So the recipes that are listed at the beginning of each chapter, it's like each chapter, whatever Tita is facing, whatever part of her life she's in, and as she's preparing recipes for some event or some family dinner, we get the ingredients at the beginning of the chapter, and then the directions and instructions are woven into the story as Tita goes about preparing these things. And that was excellent. And like I said earlier, it says January through December, but this story spans about 20 years of her life. I also mentioned the magical realism that I loved in thinking about emotions. One instance that I'll mention is Tita. Her emotions while cooking is transferred to her food, and those who eat the food are overwhelmed. If she's feeling overwhelmed, they're sad. If she's sad, if she is feeling love and passion while she's cooking and the people eat her food, they also feel those things. And then there was in one instance where she was so upset, she was heartbroken about something, she cries and it floods the whole house. So I thought it was perfect. I thought it went perfect with this story. Some themes that came about in this story was family traditions, like Tita not being able to marry just because she's the youngest daughter, which I don't think I've heard of that in other stories as well. So there must maybe some truth to that tradition, that may be a real tradition, which I think is flawed, but to each his own. The gender roles in this was unique as well because Tita's mother had expectations of her daughter. However, she was not a typical woman of her time. Her mother wasn't. She's running this ranch, at the turn of the century, in Mexico, and she's running it too. She's doing a great job of it. But then, even though she's not the typical woman and had her issues, she was forcing those traditions on her daughters, which I didn't think was right. Right? So that is that. Overall, like I said, I really enjoyed this one. You won't be disappointed if you read this one. It's a fast read, and I just I won't say I necessarily fell in love with the characters, but because it was a story that it was so different. I felt that it deserved a high star rating. So that's why I gave it the 4 or 5 stars. I can't remember what I put on there, but who cares about good reads when star ratings anyway, right? This was a good book. You won't be disappointed if you read it. And that is it for me in this one. After I finished this one in April, I then read The Healing by Jonathan Odell. So stay tuned to my next video where we will discuss The Healing. And that's it for me, y'all. I will see you in my next one. Bye, y'all.